Hello everyone, today I'm here to do a recent reads video. So I have been reading a lot of books and I'm kind of behind on my recent reads videos. I've done a lot of vlogs where I talk about them, and the majority of these books that I've read, I have read in certain vlogs, but I kind of wanted to expand on them more. So I'm going to be talking like about 5 or 6 books today. So if you don't know, with my recent reads, I try to keep them spoiler free. I did what the book is about, what I rated it, what I liked, and what I didn't like about it. As always, the timestamps for each book will be found down below in case you want to hear about one particular book. The books I will be talking about today are The Shadows by Alex North, Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson, What You Wish For by Catherine Senner, One to Watch by Kate Stayman London, A Deadly Inside Scoop by Abby Collette, and The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes by Alyssa R. Sloan. So the first book I'm going to talk about today, actually the first 2, maybe 3 actually, I've read all in the month of July, so we're kind of a month behind. Hopefully that's okay. And that is The Shadows by Alex North. Alex North made his debut on the scene of the book world last year with his debut, The Whisper Man, which I have yet to read because I had heard it was so scary and I just couldn't handle it. So I don't know why, but I thought The Shadows would be better to read when it came out because it wasn't so like child abduction centered, because I don't do that well. I've said that repeatedly. But either way, this book is very interesting and I honestly think it's a great book to read in the fall. So in this book we follow a character named Paul, and we follow 2 timelines. One when Paul was younger in his teen years and one now. So in his teen years, he has a best friend and they're kind of like outcasts and stuff. And then this guy named Charlie and another guy befriend him. And Charlie is very odd. He says weird things, gets the notion of weird things, and he starts talking about like this other world, like when you dream, kind of like, you know, Inception. And so like Charlie brings him and his friends more into it and things get crazy and basically a big murder happens and Charlie killed somebody and then he disappeared and you never know what happened or where Charlie went. Nobody can seem to find him. So it's Paul going through that when he was a teenager, because he was kind of somewhat involved with that because he was Charlie's friend, and then it goes back and then it follows him now as he goes back to the town which all this happened, which he desperately got away from as soon as it did, and learns that there's more murders happening that are copycat killings just like the one that happened so many years ago involving Charlie Crabtree. So we have 2 different timelines going on, and it really reminded me a lot of Slenderman, which I never played the game, I never will because it scares me, but it gave me that vibe of just kind of really eerie and creepy, and Alex North is definitely a great author for that. Like throughout this entire book, I was very like, just had this weird feeling inside of me. It was very eerie, and like I said, this is a great book to read for fall. Ultimately, I gave it a 3 out of 5. I might be bumping it to a 4 out of 5 because I still really have fond memories of it and did enjoy it. The one thing that I did not love about this book was the ending, and there's a lot of twists and turns with any thrillers. I'm not going to spoil any of them for you because what would be the point of reading it, but there were several in this book. I liked a lot of them, I really did. Then there was a couple that I really just I didn't like, and I really felt like kind of was just very out of left field, if you will. So that's kind of why my rating went down a little bit. But I think, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give this a 4. Even though I said it was a 3, I'm going to bump it up to a 4 because I just really enjoyed the writing and I was just invested in it. Like it definitely had kind of almost like a paranormal vibe into it, but really not. Like supernatural, if you will. And I enjoyed it a ton. So I already ordered The Whisper Man, and I figured if I'm brave enough to read The Shadows, I can read The Whisper Man and hopefully get through it. But I would recommend this. I know thrillers are popular in the summer and they're also popular in the fall, so this is a great book to read and probably get scared by. So I liked it. The next book I want to talk about is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. This is a debut novel, and I would classify this as an adult fantasy, kind of supernatural in a way. So in this book we follow a character named Emmanuel, and Emmanuel lives in this town called Bethel, where you don't know like what time period it is. Could be like the time period of like Salem, Massachusetts, but either way, Bethel is it's like a cult town. They follow this man called the Prophet, and there's like a new prophet every time that man dies. He has multiple wives. He has multiple kids from multiple wives, and it's just like the men are really revered. The women have to work a lot. It's definitely like a very like kind of religious cult that gets very scary. And Emmanuel's always been looked down upon in this town because her mother, her mother, who was white, got together with an outsider who was black, and she was actually set to be in line of like one of the prophet's wives. And not only that, she obviously got pregnant by this outsider, and she had Emmanuel, and then she passed away as soon as she had her. So Emmanuel's kind of always grown up like looking down upon because she looks different from everybody else, and she works really hard. She cares about her family. And then when she's around 16 or 17, she finds this diary of her mom that her mom kept while she was pregnant. And also in this town there are these woods, because in all these books there's always woods that are very forbidden that you can't go into because witches are there. And that's exactly what's in this book. Witches are in the woods. They're like the evil part of this town, and of course Emmanuel is drawn to it because her mother was drawn to it, so she learns more about these witches, what happened to her mom. Also, this town is, she's starting to question the religious beliefs of this town, of like the ways of the prophet and him not being the best man as he claims to be. And it's definitely an interesting book, that is for sure. I don't read a lot of cultish type of books because honestly, cults freak me out. A lot of us can attest to that. But I really enjoyed Emmanuel as a character. She was very strong, very, like, also, she loved a lot. She wanted to do the right thing. There was just so many things about her. And in this book, the whole plot is that she finds this diary, and then she accidentally unleashes like this curse on the town where these 3 plagues come about from these witches, and she has to try to stop it. Overall, I gave this one a 3 out of 5. I did enjoy it, and it was on its way to be a 4, but then the ending came, and I was it just happened so abruptly, so quick, it made no sense to me. And I wish it would have been drug out a little bit more or explained a little bit more. Maybe that's just me, but I think this is a great book, and if you're trying to get into the adult fantasy world, there wasn't too overly complicated things. You definitely knew what was going on, and you understood like what side you were on and things like that. I did enjoy this. I still need to buy my copy. I read this as an ebook, an ARC, and the cover is superb. And I will read more of her books as she publishes them because I did enjoy this one, but just the ending kind of threw me. But again, if you're looking for kind of a dark, creepier, eerie read for the fall, this is great for that. Would highly recommend it in that regard. I did really enjoy it. A 3-star is not a bad rating for me at all. It means it was a solid read. I just like didn't quite love it, nor was I quite obsessed with it. The next book I want to talk about is What You Wish For by Catherine Senner. This is her latest one. I have read, I think this is either my 3rd or 4th book by her. So this is about a character named Samantha who is a librarian at this school. It's really a progressive school. She's very close with the principal there. He's like a father to her, and then suddenly he passes away and nobody expects it, and obviously everyone is very sad. So they don't have a principal, and they're out of principal. So a new principal is coming, and his name is Duncan. And Samantha remembers, oh, I remember Duncan. I used to work with him many moons ago. He was a very fun, charismatic teacher, so he's going to fit in great at this school and everyone's going to love him. And when Duncan comes, he's the completely opposite person of what Samantha remembers. He's very cold and calculated and really only cares about security and like making the school like a fortress, if you will. And Samantha's just like, why is he like this? The whole book is her trying to figure out exactly what happened to him to make him this way. Also, Samantha's going through a lot of things as well. She has epilepsy that she has been dealing with all of her life, and she's trying to, you know, deal with it even more in this book because stress triggers it. Also, Duncan is dealing with a lot of PTSD. I don't want to tell you what exactly it is because it would be spoiling, but I feel like it's important to tell you that it does involve a shooting of some sort. And I think you can pick up on that in the book, but I know you may be mad at me because I may have spoiled something a little bit, but I feel like if that's a big trigger warning for you, you should know. Like, I always like to know when books have certain things in them myself so I can learn to whether read it or steer clear of it. So, sorry if you're mad at me, I understand. But either way, I did really enjoy this. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Catherine Senner just writes a really beautiful love story that also has amazing characters interweaved into it, and also really talks about mental health, and I enjoyed it. Samantha was very, you know, she was fun, she was quirky, and just Duncan too. When I was reading this book, I realized that Duncan was very familiar. In fact, if you have read another one of her books, Happiness for Beginners, the Duncan in that book is the Duncan in this book. So in this book we follow a character named Helen, and Helen has a brother named Duncan in this book, and that's the same Duncan. So I kind of love how Catherine did that. No, it's not a sequel by any means. You definitely don't have to read this book to read this one, but I kind of loved reading about him and how much he changed, because if you read this book and you read about Duncan, he's a completely different character in this book. So I really liked it. It's definitely not my favorite Catherine Center book. That will always be Things You Save in the Fire. I just love that one, but this one's good. Next up is One to Watch by Kate Stayman London. I read this because a lot of people were talking about it on BookTube. It's really exploding here on BookTube, and I agree with it completely. This is an amazing book. Spoiler warning, I gave 5 out of 5. I loved it. So in this book, we follow a character named Bee, and Bee is a plus-size fashion blogger, and she loves this show called Main Squeeze, where it's pretty much The Bachelor, Bachelorette. And one night she's watching the Main Squeeze, and she writes this Twitter or blog post, you know, that she's really upset because they never have enough diversity on the show. With body diversity, you know, everyone's always picture perfect and thin and beautiful, and she's like, that's not real life. And what do you know, Main Squeeze has a new producer, and the new producer's like, hey, let's contact Bee and get her to be the next Main Squeeze, you know, the next Bachelorette. And so Bee just does that. She goes on this show called Main Squeeze, and she becomes the new Bachelorette, and every chapter is kind of an episode into it. You get to meet all of these guys, and you're trying to figure out, you know, do they like her for her? Are they just using it for fame? Because let's be real. The Bachelor, Bachelorette, a lot of people that go on that show just want their 5 seconds of fame. They want to extend, you know, their TV time by endorsements and things like that. That's just how it is. I don't think there's a lot of long-lasting couples on that show. But please know that I wouldn't know, because I don't enjoy that show. I'm just not into it. But even though I'm not into it, I still love this book. And I think that if you are not a fan of that show as well, like myself, you will still like this book, because Bee was a very likable character. You know, being plus size myself, like, I felt so represented in this book when it comes to sizes, when you are questioning yourself constantly whether guys are like into you for you or just, I definitely love the way they wrote that, and the romance was just, oh, I just really love this book. Would highly recommend it. It's a great summer read. I know we're on the last month of summer here, but I still think you can squeeze it in if you want to, and I loved it a ton. I gave it a 5 out of 5, and I can't wait to see what else this author's going to write in the future. Next up, I have A Deadly Inside Scoop by Abby Collette. This is the first book in the Ice Cream Parlor mystery series, so this is a cozy mystery, and it was my first cozy mystery, and cozy mysteries are different from regular thrillers because cozy mysteries are always set in a small town. You always have this, they use the term on Google, sleuth detective to try to figure out a murder, and usually there's a really big absence of like gore and violence and sexual things. That's what a cozy mystery is. Overall, I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5. I liked it, I didn't love it, but goodness me, the characters were so freaking adorable in this book. So in this book, we have a character named Wynn, and Wynn is reopening her grandparents' ice cream shop because it's been shut down for a while. She wants to revamp it and redo it, so she does just that. And then one night, when she's like collecting snow for ice cream, she finds a dead body, and her and her friend kind of go on a hunt to figure out what happened, like who killed this person, why. Her family gets involved somehow, and that's kind of the premise about this book. I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 because there just wasn't a lot that happened. I just didn't really find it thrilling. But then again, I'm used to mystery thrillers. So I'd say if you're a big fan of mystery thriller genre, I'd maybe steer away from cozy mysteries, but I don't know. I definitely want to read more and see if I do enjoy the genre. I'm not saying I like the gore and violence and all that stuff with thrillers, but I feel like there's more suspense in them. Like there's a constant guessing game. And in this book, it just wasn't quite there. The end definitely got quicker and it got my attention again. I really did enjoy about this book was the character Wynn, and also her coming up with these ice cream concoctions. Like I remember very specifically she made this one called caramel corn, when she put like actual corn in it, but it tasted like caramel popcorn. Like I would like to try that ice cream. And she made one called Boo Berry, and it's adorable. And she was an amazing character through and through. But I would say if you don't like mystery thrillers because they're just too intense for you, cozy mysteries might be the way to go. I think that you will love this. If you're just like, mystery thrillers are too scary for me, too much for me, I can't quite handle it, I'm not ready for that, or I don't want to be ready for that, cozy mysteries are a great one for you. They're not going to be too intense. There's a mystery going on, but it's not going to scare the socks off of you. So I enjoyed this one. I will probably continue out the series. I did enjoy the writing, and the characters were really adorable. So a 3 out of 5. Again, 3 is not a bad rating at all. It was solid. I just don't know if cozy mysteries are my genre, which is okay, because I know there's so many people out there that love them, and I'm so happy that they do, because I think it's a great genre, but not every genre is meant for every single reader. The last book I want to talk about is The Unraveling of Cassidy, Holmes by Alyssa R. Sloan. So I read this one on a whim because it was about this girl group called Gloss in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I was very drawn to that because we all know how much I love the 90s. And it also gave me very much Daisy Jones 6 vibes, because in this book we also follow many different timelines. Honestly, we follow Cassidy, who is becoming a part of this girl group called Gloss in the early 2000s, and it's about her rise to fame and what's going on with her. And then we also follow the time period of now with the other members of Gloss, because Cassidy has committed suicide. So they're each, dealing with that in their own separate way, and you're learning what's happened to them in the years since Gloss has broken up, because they were so popular like in the late 90s, and they broke up in 2002, and it's just been that ever since. So you're learning more about them and what happened to them during that time period. And it's just really, the title says it all, The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes. So this book really dives into fame and what fame does to you, and kind of the really gritty and scary world of fame that Cassidy had to deal with, as far as, being a pop singer with body expectations as far as other celebrities go. There's a lot of trigger warnings in here, with obviously suicide being one, sexual assault. There was also just a lot of there was drugs talked about in this book. There's the things I think you can expect with behind the scenes when it comes to fame. I did really enjoy it. I gave it a 4 out of 5. It wasn't quite a 5 out of 5 for me, because I kind of wanted more from it, because when I think of books like this, I think of Daisy Jones and the Six, and I love that book because I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. And it wasn't quite up there with that level for me personally, but I still would recommend this a ton. I don't think that you need to love like pop music in the early 2000s to like this book. This book obviously got inspiration from like Spice Girls, from NSYNC. They even mention NSYNC in this book. Backstreet Boys. There's a lot of just the Britney Spears culmination of all these pop stars, and like what's really happening behind closed doors that we don't see, that they're dealing with on an everyday basis, because goodness, this really opens your eyes to it. But I really enjoyed it. It's definitely kind of, I wouldn't say it's a dark novel, but it deals with suicide, so obviously that's a very dark issue. But I did enjoy like reading about the rise to fame and things that happened to them with family members and things like that. It was very interesting, and I would recommend it. I hope more people read it, because I haven't heard like anybody talk about this quite yet, but I liked it a ton. So goodness me, there you have my thoughts on like 6 books. You have a wide genre to choose from. You have some romance in here, some kind of literary fiction ones, some thrillers, cozy mystery. If you need a genre, this video's got it all for you. I would love to hear if you've read any of these books and what were your thoughts on them. Please share in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.